Good evening, everybody, and welcome to International Women's Day 2023. I have an amazing group of people that I am so excited to share with you and also share their stories. I remember when I was at school, I was only 17 years old, and I was in my French class with my friend Natasha, and we decided to look into how we could work for the South African Foreign Service. It was pre-Google days. I can't really remember a life without Google, but we sent a letter to apply for an information pack. And when the information pack arrived, we went through all the criteria, and one of the compulsory subject requirements for the female applicants was typing. Natasha and I had done typing as a subject at school, but we dropped it the year before, so we couldn't apply. So why typing? Well, as a female in the Foreign Service, you would only be typing and filing. You would be put in the woman won't be doing the important job box. And this really stuck with me. And of course, it had an impact on the way my life turned out. But at the time, I wasn't really bothered. I just shrugged my shoulders and thought, well, it's probably just not meant to be. But thinking back, I realized that I didn't actually have a choice. And that choice was simply reduced because I was a female. Now, millions of women have had the same experiences because a lady called Dame Margaret Anstey, she even called her book Never Learned to Type. And she was born in 1926. And when she was at school in the 1940s, she refused to learn to type. She said, I'm only going to take another language because I want to learn Spanish. And so she got a job in the Foreign Service with Spanish. But another struggle that she had to face was the marriage bar at the time meant that she had to resign when she got married. So she had to end her career. But after she had a divorce later on, she stepped up and started working for the UN again. And she climbed the ladder and she became the highest ranking female in the UN, the Under Secretary General for South America. And she was also the first woman to head a UN peacekeeping mission in Angola, all because she refused to be put in the typing box. And she knew that if she learned to type, that was what would have happened. Today, things have changed in many ways, especially in the first world. There's still, of course, either blatant or slightly hidden discrimination. But as women, we are protected in law. But you will hear more about that. That's not always the case, and things don't always turn out how they should this evening as well. And in our female quest to continue being so brilliant, we need to remember that men need to and also want to be part of our journey. We should never use these opportunities to divide us or turn the conversation into us and them. So tonight, I want to celebrate women in our communities, and not because we've been suppressed or because we struggle because of our gender, but because we are simply amazing. We take what is thrown at us, we bring people together, we create communities and build relationships, and we bring love and light to all those around us, even through the fog of menopause. But we fight on and we inspire those around us. It is also important that tonight we continue to remember that not all women on our planet have what we have. And so I dedicate this event to those women around the world who face struggles that we can barely comprehend, which I hope will give us inspiration to continue to offer a hand up to those who need it, men and women. So let's embrace equity together, and let's do it locally and globally. So welcome to International Women's Day. Thank you very much. And our first speaker is Tim Mullett. So thank you, Tim. Tim grew up near Frome, and he has had a very interesting life, varied as well. An initial career in the then very female-dominated military was followed by a stint in world music and nightclubs. How interesting. He then spent 15 years in Vietnam in senior leadership positions in a predominantly female-staffed sectors of healthcare, education, and charity, where International Women's Day is traditionally celebrated by giving a single rose to your female colleagues. I love that. Now an executive coach and consultant specializing in a holistic approach to performance and well-being, Tim is also a qualified Soma breathwork instructor. And currently, very exciting, is completing a program with Paul McKenna to certify as a hypnotherapist. So Tim's talk is about exploring the power of words through the lens of our conscious and unconscious. And Tim's talk is What's in a Word? So take it away, Tim.
Thank you, Dawn. Tonight, I'm going to make you think. Perhaps not in the way you're expecting, but perhaps more equitably. I want to talk about the words we choose and why they're important. What's in a word? We all make conscious choices every day. We choose the clothes we wear, for work, for fashion, for comfort. We choose the food we eat, healthy or perhaps less healthy. We choose the TV we watch. And you've all chosen to be here tonight to listen to us. And for that, we really thank you. And we make choices because we understand the implications of them, the impact, their outcomes. But what about the words we choose? Are they important? Sticks and stones may break my bones, names will never harm me. We all know that's just so untrue. Names and words can be very hurtful. And in the perspective of discrimination, incredibly damaging. All the speakers tonight have chosen their words very carefully for impact. And I'll bet actually you're all pretty careful with your words in most situations, most of the time. Social situations, at work, you don't just disengage brain and open your mouth, or at least not very often. But what about the words we use internally? The words we say to ourselves, how consciously are they chosen? What impact does that inner voice, that chatter, have on us? Do we really know? Do you know that neuroscientists now believe that only 5% of our brain activity is conscious? And in fact, of that 5%, only half is intentional. So that leaves 97.5% of our brain activity doing other stuff. Now, really important stuff. So keeps your blood circulating, your heart beating, my beard growing, your nails, your hair, your balance. It also drives our personality and our behavior, who we are. I was in a car the other day, and it was a really unpleasant experience. You idiot! Why are you going so slowly? We should have left earlier. We're going to be late. Stop complaining about saying it's so uncomfortable. Geez, you're so fat. Really unpleasant. The other person in the car was me. That was my inner voice. And we all have one, even if we don't recognize it. That cake looks delicious. Go on, you can have that. Go on, have another piece. Do I look all right in this? Are people going to like me? What would they think of me? And very often, these voices are negative. But in fact, they're negative because they're trying to protect us. And our unconscious is there to protect us, but has a tendency to overdo it. It's intentional, but not logical. So it's trying to protect us, but doesn't necessarily know the right way how. And the overreaction leads to phobias, anxiety, addictions, mind blocks. Can we change it? Or should we just ignore it, tolerate it? Well, hypnotherapy and to a certain extent mindset coaching work with the unconscious to change that behavior, to actually talk to the subconscious and say, you could do this a little differently. You don't need to provide this level of fear, this level of protection. There are other ways to do it. And what can you do yourself? Well, awareness is the key. Awareness is everything. Meditation and mindfulness have been around for generations, thousands of years, maybe with different labels. And that's because awareness leads to choice. If you acknowledge your real voice, you don't have to listen to it. Just be aware of it. But then choose the right one for you. Choose the angel on your shoulder, not the devil. Don't have that piece of cake or on another. Don't have that piece of cake. It's not good for you. Choose positivity rather than negativity. Optimism rather than pessimism. Choose curiosity and excitement rather than fear and reluctance. It's your choice whether to listen to your voice, that inner voice or not. So be kinder and fairer to yourself. Be more equitable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. I listen to that voice a lot on both sides. Thank you so much. Up next, we've got Charlie. Charlie Wilson is the founder and creator of DEA, which strives to offer interactive and immersive language learning and cultural experiences within the community through language clubs, classes, and cultural events. Embracing equity stands for everything she does in life and in her work. Her goal is to find a way of sharing what that means, putting it into perspective, and why we should all be aware of the importance of it. Tonight, Charlie's talk is about fairness and unfairness, as we understand it in our own privileged upbringing, and about changing perspectives by highlighting what unfairness really looks like in the wider world and what we can do to change that. Charlie's talk is It's Not Fair. So thank you so much, Charlie.
Thank you. It's not fair. A monologue between older Charlie and younger Charlie. It's not fair. Why can't my hair be straight and go in a nice tidy bun like the other ballet dancers? Because you were born with thick curly hair, just like you were born with brown eyes, and just like you decided you wanted to learn ballet. One day, I'll show you what fair and unfair really looks like. It's not fair. Why can't I go to the party? Everyone else is going except for me. It's just a party after all. It's not like I'm asking for much. Exactly. It's just a party. And there'll be many more in the future. And soon this one will become a distant memory. One day, I'll show you what fair and unfair really looks like. It's not fair. All the boys are chasing after her and they don't even give me a second look. Don't worry. Be patient. Your time will come. And when it does, you'll realize it was worth the wait. One day, I'll show you what fair and unfair really looks like. Seriously? What, not even an interview? But I ticked all the boxes. Well, almost all the boxes, but no one ever ticks all the boxes, right? And then they go and give the job to someone who was already doing it anyway. How is that even fair? Okay, I think now you're ready to see what fair and unfair really looks like. Meet Shola. She dreams of becoming a ballet dancer, but her parents are struggling to put food on her table or to pay her school fees, let alone pay for her ballet classes. Plus, what kind of a career is a ballet dancer anyway? It's not going to provide for your family. And this is Anya. She can't go to the party because she has to work the night shift at the family restaurant. Again, you know, it's not easy setting up a family business, and even less so when it's out of your native country. And this is Nala. She doesn't get to guess whether he loves her or he loves her not. For her, marriage is not a choice, it's her duty. And lastly, Carolina. She's spent her entire life savings to come to this country in order to secure a better future for her and her daughter. And now, this very future rests on whether or not she will be getting this job. So, next time the phrase, "it's not fair," threatens to pop into your head or even out of your mouth, maybe take some time and remember these stories and be aware and understand just where your privileges lie. But not just that. Take action and support and contribute to those causes that basically seek to help those individuals who face daily unfairness and injustice. That's what embracing equity really means. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Holly Supka. She is a writer of poetry and opinion journalism, a curator and creator of events and experiences, an avid reader and enthusiast of connecting with people. Recently, Holly experienced a variety of big changes in her life, and coming into a new community alongside reading around the subject of mental health and holistic well-being has given her a new perspective on the place that community love could have as a real and tangible presence in everyday life. Joining Alcoholics Anonymous was Holly's first experience of community love and support. She aims to explore how the practice of caring for those outside of our inner circle through acts of service can be integrated into our daily lives, using AA as an example, jumping off point, and the myriad ways this could improve the lives of individuals, enable equity, and bring power to collectives. Holly's talk is what community love can do for us and how to integrate it into our lives. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I was recently presented with the question, what if romantic love is an elaborate distraction to make us forget that we could be demanding community love? When I was faced with this question, I had to try and imagine a society that puts community love above romantic love as the ideal that we strive for. We're encouraged through media, whether that's TV, film, dating apps, whatever, to focus on and aim for romantic fulfillment. But our needs for care and connection can be met by people in our local community rather than romantic partners or anyone in our inner circle. My own upbringing and experience was quite lacking in examples of community. I predominantly grew up in Singapore and Dubai, and then most of my adulthood was in Freeman, Bristol. And it was only really 5 months ago that I came across an example of community love in action that was totally separate from affinity, similarities, personality, or shared interests. Aside from the inner circle that I'd created based on those things, it was that and kind of blood relation that was creating the support system around me. So it was only 5 months ago when I started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that I was really struck by this example of community love that seemed really separate from the society that I had experienced. What was immediately notable in AA were two particular things. One of them was their ethos of principles before personalities, and the second was the emphasis on acts of service. So in AA, I've seen people hold space for the difficulties of others while maintaining boundaries and give up their time without waiting to gauge whether they're compatible with the person who requires support. Examples of service that I've seen in AA would be like making tea at a meeting, greeting newcomers, sponsoring those, so taking them through the steps in early recovery, driving people to meetings, covering someone's coffee or dinner at a social, or even just calling someone to see how they are. And these are things that I've experienced in these 5 months that were offered not because I had any connection to these people, not even because they liked me, but because those in AA are aware that providing service for others in the fellowship strengthens the community as a whole, supports everyone through mutual aid, and actually helps the person providing service to feel happier, more grounded, more secure in their sobriety, and more connected to the world around them. It sparked an internal dialogue for me on the depths of the benefits of community love and how it can manifest outside of fellowships like AA. It's great that people in recovery can access this, but I've become steadily more aware of how everyone needs community love, not just those struggling with addiction. There are many amazing pieces of literature on the power of community, but one example that came to me was from a book that I read recently called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. The book explores why so many people experience depression and anxiety and how we can look to address these problems holistically rather than seeking to medicate people. There's a particular example in the book that I would encourage anyone to read about. It's in the book, but you can also find it online, which is the story of the community in Kotti, Berlin, that banded together to campaign to freeze their rent to save the life of one of their residents. This true story perfectly encapsulates how investing one's time in their community through acts of service can bring limitless support and joy to people's lives. That's those receiving help, those giving, and those witnessing or being a part of that kind of compassion. This particular example also shows the empowerment of a group in loving community with one another. They take up each other's concerns, as we do with our inner circle naturally with our loved ones. But the act of bridging the gap between their differences reduces division, encourages tolerance, and allows them to learn from each other. It also allows them to prevent a united front against institutions that are unfairly exploiting them. I think that simply practicing mutual aid and stepping out of our close circle to offer care and support provides huge potential for reducing division and being able to reform or abolish institutions that don't serve us collectively. The book also details the scientific research behind how performing acts of kindness for others and immersing yourselves in the lives of other people who are separate from you can reduce a plethora of mental health issues. After my experience of community love in AA, I'm simply looking to encourage more initiatives like this around me, starting with Frome. I'm currently in conversation with a community venue in Frome on how we can set up a couple of community love boards as an experiment. The basic premise would be a need board and an offer board, where people could take a post-it and write something that they could offer, and that could be an hour's babysitting, a home-cooked meal, a haircut, some help writing a CV, or just some companionship. On the need board, you could put a call out to your community for whatever kind of support you're looking for. We're currently looking at the safest and most sustainable way to signpost each person's contact details, but I'm hoping to trial this experiment in the next few months in Frome. I'd like to just end with a quote which I think really encapsulates the need for community love, which is by Audre Lorde. The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them and lessens the threat of their difference. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Holly. I'm looking forward to being part of that community board. That'll be so much fun. Up next, we have Storm Jaxen, and Storm has volunteered as a radio broadcaster at Summer Valley FM for over 5 years. And if you haven't listened to her show, you need to. She has had to face some really tricky situations. She had to deal with pregnancy discrimination and bullying in the workplace, which resulted in the very sad loss of her baby due to stress. But she has found, remarkably, the strength to get up every day and make mental health a priority. She now explores what happens when we are part of change and the movement to make better the life for women that are to come. And she strives to be the change she wants to see in the world today and for the woman standing next to her. She hopes that we will all be inspired by her story. So Storm's talk is about finding strength with one another and breaking down the boundaries set in our minds. And the title of her talk is called Be the Light. Thank you so much, Storm.
Thank you, Dawn. Hi. Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Maya Angelou. In 2021, it was revealed that 36% of adults reported discrimination in the workplace. 11% of that was age-related, and the second most common theme was gender-related discrimination. The Equal Opportunities Commission revealed that more than 70% of pregnant women who are treated unfairly in the UK suffer in silence. They estimated that 1 million women over a 5-year period could be sacked, bullied, demoted, or isolated for simply having a baby. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is Embrace Equity. That is the quality of being fair and impartial. Unfortunately, many of these basic rights we've had to fight for. A bit of my story: in 2021, I informed my employer at the time that I was pregnant. Shortly after that, I was called into a meeting. I was told I was going to be demoted and I was going to have my pay decreased. I contacted the charity Pregnant Then Screwed, and with advice from them, I raised a formal grievance. What followed after that left me feeling anxious, stressed, bullied, excluded, I later, like Dawn explained, experienced a miscarriage, and then my employment was terminated. After we experienced the miscarriage, financially, I was desperate. I had no choice. I had to find new employment. My body was still healing and my mental health was fragile at best. Whew. It's a bit emotional to speak about this. Today, I'm here to speak about awareness. I'm here to speak about mental health. And 17 months into this case that is still going, I could have quit a million times. I could have quit last year. I could have quit this morning. But I've been made to feel worthless, harassed and bullied on countless occasions. I've spent hours crying, not just for the loss of our baby, but for the torment that just seems to be never ending, when all I'm trying to do is stand up for what's right. I've had moments when I felt that I'm not strong enough, that I'm not able to make my way through. But in these moments, I've had to learn to pick myself up. I've had to find my own worth, make my mental health a priority in order to allow me to keep pushing forward. I found strength in myself in these last 17 months that I never knew existed. There's definitely power that I discovered when I made that decision to help myself. I've managed to take back control of my life, finding purpose in my struggle by having a cause that's simply bigger than me. Now, of course, my personal struggle, it is about me and my partner and our baby that we lost, but it is also part of a much bigger picture. This time, this fight, it's all been made possible by various different things. I've increased my exercise, increased my meditation, made self-care a priority, undergoing counseling, speaking with my friends and family, and also volunteering in my community. To find strength in all of the women around me, to make me feel that I'm standing not just for myself, but for all women in the workplace. When I'd started my new job, I went onto Facebook Marketplace and I found a cheap secondhand exercise bike. I joined a free spinning class on YouTube, and for the first 8 months, I was on that bike 5 days a week. Without it, I quite simply would have been lost. And to me, that just wasn't an option. Eventually, I found the courage to tell my new employer what I'd been through. I feel so grateful, not just for their compassion, but the support of my new employer and Summer Valley FM as I stand and pursue my justice. If you feel that you might be a victim of any form of pregnancy discrimination at work, please contact Pregnant Then Screwed. They're a great charity. If you feel that you might be victim to any form of workplace discrimination, contact your GP for mental health support. They are amazing. And find the ACAS website. There you can familiarize yourself not just with your rights, but also the responsibilities of your employer. And I think that is key to making this change. My message is just a simple one. It's a simple one of strength, determination, and fairness for all women in the workforce. I call you to be the change that you want to see in the world, to be the compassion that we all wish we would see and encounter on a day-to-day basis. But most importantly, I call on us all to simply be the, losing my words, to simply be the light, not just as we stand up for ourselves, but to create a better tomorrow for the young women that are still to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Storm. Thank you for being so brave and sharing that. That really is incredibly powerful. Thank you. Up next, we have Caroline Evans. Caroline calls herself a humble herbalist who truly started walking her path when visiting Cyprus, gorgeous Cyprus, where she was taken to a tiny village in the Akamas Hills to an abandoned schoolhouse, and she asked if she could restore the land. So she set about creating a herbal garden, a working apothecary, a small cafe on the site, while at the same time traveling to London every month to officially train as a master herbalist. Caroline absolutely adores guiding women to their aha moment when they realize how easily they can help themselves, get in touch with their own nature and step into their innate wisdom and heal themselves naturally. She has a clinic in Frome, is a self-published author of 3 books, and runs online courses and in-person workshops. Now, Caroline's talk is really very interesting. It's called The Wise Woman of Nature. Historically, women are the medicine makers of old, and this innate wisdom is ours to remember, and our health is in our hands. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Did you know that the word witch comes from the Old English word, which means wit, which means wise woman of nature? We are the witches, the wise ones, the weavers. We are the midwives. We are the sages. We are the healers of old. We know how to use the plant medicine around us to heal us. We all used to know this, but this knowledge seems to be lost. So reconnect with your roots, not with Africa, India, Italy, or that, but with the land, with the soil, exactly where you're at. For if we remember for a moment how we've been conditioned by that big black box on the wall, and in hand, that tells all where to go, what to do, who to show, and where to listen. If we put it down, turn it off, go outside, arms stretched open wide, and breathe deep. We remember for a moment that this is where the healing is. For that's what we did during lockdown. We went outside in our droves because we could. We went to the parks, to the rivers. Most of all, we went to the gardens, for there was where we found our happy healing place. I remember that first weekend of lockdown, actually, we moved into our new house. And my son, he runs out the house, goes straight up the willow tree, climbs to the top of the tree, and at the top of his voice, he shouts out, "Lockdown is over, everybody. Come out into your gardens, put your hands in the soil and find God's heart." The children know. Oh, do they know? They know that this is where we're meant to be at. And we know it too. For we are the witches, the wise ones, the weavers. We are the midwives. We are the sages. We are the healers of old. Our libraries were burned, our knowledge devoured. We learned to take chemicals, derivatives of thee. We learned that of the easy pill popping option and forgot about the big she. We forgot that nature heals us, that nature has medicine abound. We forgot that not only does it heal us, but it makes our bodies strong. It helps us to deal with infection. And what's more, with viruses, it acts like a deflection. We forgot too that the planet is us, that we are made up of it, exactly from sand to the stars and everything in between, that our body innately knows how to heal. Remember how amazing a body is. A body can grow a baby. It's amazing. And that same body can give birth to a baby. And that same body can feed a baby. A body can grow tissue. That same body can heal that tissue. And what's more, that body can remove diseased tissue from our own bodies. We forgot how amazing we are. I remember many moons ago, sitting on my neighbour's veranda, Daphne, old Daphne in Cyprus, and we're talking about her 4 natural home births. And she says, she advised me to go to hospital for mine. I said, but why, when your 4 home births were fine? She said, yeah, but you see, that's what we do nowadays. It's for the best. I was so surprised. We've lost our connection with nature. We've lost our trust. We've lost our trust and our knowledge and know-how with nature and with our own innate nature and the power that we have within. There is always surgery. There is always pharmacy. There is everything is always there. There's always this quick pill. This is but one branch of medicine. We forgot of all the others. We forgot thinking that chemicals were the only way, where all the while nature watches us getting sicker and sicker and thicker and thicker. So Remember your wisdom, your inner wisdom. Trust in your own nature. Trust in nature. Learn all you can. Ask those that have gone before, the wise women and the wise men of old. Ask them to show you the way. For every town used to have a master herbalist, and every house had a herbalist. For nature does not discriminate who uses her medicine. She produces it all the same. For we are the witches, the wise ones, the weavers. We are the midwives, the sages, the healers of old. Now, do you remember?
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you very much. And I love the space that you're in. Looks gorgeous. Lovely. So up next, we've got Abby Young. And Abby is the UK artist representative for Riote 3, a Hungarian-led EU-funded program developing participatory theatre techniques with Europe's most disadvantaged Roma Gypsy communities. She's also the co-artistic director and producer for Tall Tales Theatre Company, founded in 2019 to make highly accessible theatre for children and their families. And she works, very busy lady, as an advocacy worker for Kushti-Bok, which means good luck, I just discovered, which is wonderful, which partners with Citizens Advice to support the travelling communities to access healthcare, education, and information. Her hope is to live in a world where travellers' history and culture are understood, embraced, and authentically reflected in the stories that we hear and tell. So Abby's talk, she'll be sharing a pocketbook history of the travelling community, the facts around their social economic outcomes, and how we can become allies. And her talk is called, What Do You Think Of When You Hear the Word Gypsy? Thank you, Abby.
What do you think of when you hear the word gypsy? Are you influenced by what's portrayed in the news? By what's said by comedians? By what you read online? My aim in this talk is to counter some of the misconceptions about the GRT ethnicities and create more allies and understanding. So what does GRT actually mean? Let's go through it together. G. G is for gypsies, also known as Romany travellers or Romany gypsies. They originate from nomadic tribes in northwest India, and after leaving India, they reached Europe in the 13th century and Britain in the 16th century. R. R is for Roma. Roma are gypsies who came to England this century, many arriving from Eastern Europe just before World War I. And T. T is for travellers. There are lots of travelling ethnicities, Welsh travellers, Scottish travellers, but I'm going to talk to you about Irish travellers because that's who I work with. In the 17th century, many Irish families were depossessed of their homes during Cromwell's oppression and the potato famine. These events led to an increase in families adopting a nomadic lifestyle. And then, in the 1960s, domestic policies in Ireland led to the migration of many Irish travellers to the UK. Gypsy, Roma, and traveller people have historically been persecuted across Europe, with every modern EU state having an anti-Gypsy law at some point. For example, in the 16th century, a law was passed in England that allowed the state to imprison, banish, or kill anyone they thought was a gypsy. And of course, we all know that during the Second World War, over a quarter of the Roma population were murdered by the Nazis. All of this history and the history that's happening now, Section 4 of the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, all of this history has led to gypsies and travellers having this country's worst outcomes across a range of social indicators. And here are a few statistics. The average life expectancy of a gypsy or traveller is 50 years old. Gypsies and travellers are 7 times more likely than the general population to commit suicide. And young gypsies and travellers are twice as likely to be excluded from secondary school and 7 times more likely to be excluded from secondary school than the general population. So it's probably not a surprise to you to hear that gypsies and travellers continue to experience really high levels of racism and hate crime. And I think that this is because people tend to see being a gypsy or a traveller as a lifestyle choice, rather than being ethnic groups who deserve to live culturally appropriate lives. It is fundamental for us as a British society to acknowledge and address anti-gypsyism. So what can we do? How can you become a much needed ally? Here's 3 ways. Number 1, use capital letters when writing gypsy, Roma, or traveller, and comment online when articles don't use capital letters. Ask them to change their mistakes. 2, follow gypsy and traveller groups on social media, such as Kushti-Bok, Friends, Families and Travellers, and the Traveller Movement. These charities will give you accurate information about what's happening for the communities and keep you up to date with current campaigns and initiatives. 3, find out what is happening for your local GRT communities and put your voice where it's needed. I believe that together we can build a world where gypsy and traveller history and culture is understood, embraced, and authentically represented in the stories that we hear and tell. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abby. That was really lovely to hear all those numbers and find out a bit more. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, next up, we have Cavanagh. Caroline's mission is to change people's relationships with anxiety because it is so badly perceived. But when people learn to take control of their negative thoughts, step out of their comfort zone and give their mind leadership, those feelings can lead to growth, confidence, and success. Caroline loves talking to all types of audiences about easy, practical techniques to help people change anxiety from something that holds them back to a power that can direct them and give them energy to thrive. Caroline's talk is called Anxiety, Time to Appreciate the Value in It.
Have you ever mucked up? My first memory of mucking up was as a young gymnast. I was standing on the floor, waiting for the music to start. And if I performed as I could, the team gold medal was within reach. But on the first tumble, I mucked up and landed on my head. There was no pain, but I couldn't move. Because if I lifted my head, I feared seeing the disappointment in my coach's face. I feared the anger from my teammates. I feared the judgment from the audience. Fear was paralyzing me. But then I felt 2 hands lifting me up. But it wasn't disappointment I saw in his face, it was compassion. Come on, Caroline, it's okay. And as I looked to the team bench, it wasn't anger I saw, it was concern. Are you okay, Caroline? Are you hurt? My thoughts were creating the fear. But my coach went across to the competition organizer and asked if I could go again. We were only 10, it was hardly the Olympics. So I found myself once more on those cold gym mats. What if I mucked up again? What if I let everyone down? Would anxiety stop me from performing my best? If I could go and be that little gymnast again, I'd take with me the things I've learned that have changed my relationship with anxiety. I'm kind of pleased you don't have time travel because the idea of putting a leotard again doesn't appeal. I can use these techniques. And they do help me when I'm facing risk, when I muck up, and I love sharing them with others. So tonight, I'm going to share with you the one tip that time after time after time people tell me has the biggest influence when fear is holding them back, causing them to freeze. But before we dive into that, there's one principle that underpins all of the work that I do. Fear is not a bad thing. Fear is not a bad thing. It just needs leadership. Leadership in the face of risk. Fear's role is survival. Fear keeps us alive as part of that fight, flight, or freeze response. Little me was frozen because her fear was protecting her from those negative judgments. But here's the problem. The fear response can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. Her thoughts weren't the reality, but triggered her fear all the same. And this is one of the main reasons that so many people struggle with anxiety. Thoughts can create fears. And this is where flip it comes in. Can you remember those questions being asked on that corner of the floor? What if I mucked up? What if I let people down? Well, the mind loves answering what if questions. Flip it is all about focusing on the positive, because what if questions are typically negative. And it works a bit like this. What if I muck up? What if you perform brilliantly? What if I let people down? What if you help win that team gold? It doesn't matter what question you ask your mind, it will answer it. So flip it, focuses your mind, gives it leadership to be positive. The mind is much like a muscle. When you flex a muscle, it gets strong. So if you flex that positive muscle, it gets stronger and the negative muscle weakens. And when you practice flip it, you can create a really positive mindset. And with that lens on, the perception of risk changes too. Leadership of your mind gives you leadership of your fear. Tonight's theme, embrace equity. And equity has two meanings. The quality of fairness and impartiality and value. Is fair impartial? Absolutely. We all feel it. Does fear have value? Absolutely. If we didn't have fear, we wouldn't survive. But when you use flip it, you give leadership to your fear that can help you perform to your best, to thrive. I'm Cavanagh, an anxiety specialist, and I believe fear is a good thing. And I hope you can now start embracing the equity in your fear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I feel like I need to go back to gymnastics. Thank you very much. And finally, we have dessert, which is Wafaa Powell. Wafaa has lived in different cultures and would love to share her experiences to support others. She has a master's degree in sociology and counseling, and she is the founder and owner of Dancing Flavours, where she fills your belly with Lebanese food and then teaches you to shake it about with belly dancing. Wafaa's talk is about those trends that we follow in all aspects of life without questioning or checking facts, which can be misleading. So, thank you, Wafaa. Her talk is about what happened to resilience.
What happened to resilience? Am I the only one noticing that there is lots of victims around me? People being victimized by their faith, by their age, by their gender, by their all sorts of things, every aspect of life. And I've noticed sometimes we women are very guilty of that. Am I the only one to notice that men too experience discrimination, inequality, unfairness in the workplace and everywhere, despite their color and age and sexuality and all other life conditioning? Am I the only one thinking that we will be becoming, as a society and a community, we're becoming very sensitive, we're becoming a bit self-centered, or actually quite a lot self-centered? To an extent, I know lots of people who are trying to hold what they're thinking for fear of sharing and offending. And that doesn't fit with the freedom of speech. The more we focus on me and the others, us and the others, the more we're creating society and culture that is made of small pocket, made of separation. Our world now needs more than ever, we need unity and we need connections. I can see it, if we continue that way, we will be in a virtual world very soon living, because that is the safest way to live. Throughout the history of humans, there were always being conflicts, there were being people bullying and people bullied, there had been people controlled, people being controlled, there was people suffering, there was people having good life. Contrast of life always existed as long as a human existed. And we are now, the way we live our freedom because for those people who stood up and spoke out or proved that there is better way to live. And that's what we always aim for. But also we have to accept that life is challenging. And when life challenges us, what do? We only can be resilient. Now, Linda Sherry is an educational consultant in psychology, defines resilience as the ability to cope and recover from life setbacks, despite feeling the pain, the hurt, and the anxiety. What do I know about anxiety or about not resilience, about resilience? What do I know about resilience? Well, I can tell you what I can tell you about the resilience. I have survived 20 years of war. I had to evacuate my elderly parents twice. I had to look after my father, who was bedridden for 3.5 years while holding a full-time job. I got married in totally new culture and a new country. And soon after that, I moved to another country and a new culture. And through it all, I did feel the pain, the unfairness, the loneliness, all what comes with it. But in all that time, I never focused on those things. My focus was on what I have. Lucy Horn is a TED talker, TED speaker. Her talk about resilience is a must listen. We all need to listen to it. She is a lecturer, an author, and a teacher about on resilience. She taught for years and years until the day come when she had to apply what she teaches others to do in her own life when she lost her young daughter in a car accident. And that is the best test to any teaching we do. Lucy defined resilience, resilient people in 3 characteristics they have. First, resilient people accept that suffering is part of life. They accept it, they don't fall victim to it. Lucy Horn talks about the second characteristic as resilient people will focus on what they have. One of the sentences she said, and it sat in my heart and I will never forget it. She says, Do not lose what you have for what you have lost. Do not lose what you have for what you have lost. How strong is that and how deep? Third, resilient people check on their thoughts and on their action. If they ask the question, if this idea, if what's in my head is what I'm doing is helping me, if the answer is no, they take responsibility and they do something about it. And I think we all heard, and we know so many people who apply that. And we just heard some tonight. Any one of us can tell stories and stories about discrimination, about hate, about unfairness, about horrible accident and experiences. But we all have inbuilt within us, inside us, we have the resilience. We are born with it. All what we have to do is to dig it out and use it. So when life adversities hit us, there is only two ways. There is up and down. I made my choice. I wonder what you choose.
Thank you so much, Wafaa. Thank you. And let's bring everybody back online. If you all want to turn on your cameras so we can all say goodbye. Thank you so much for sharing of yourselves, specifically to Storm and to Holly for sharing some really, powerful examples that will inspire others. I know they will. And I want to thank you all for joining us this evening for International Women's Day. It has been a joy to introduce you to these human beings, these amazing human beings. I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of things. So Sheryl Sandberg was the Chief Operating Officer at Meta until August 2022. And she said, we cannot change what we are not aware of. And once we are aware, we cannot help but change. And she also said, in the future, there will be no female leaders. There will just be leaders. Thank you, everybody, again for joining us. And I look forward to next year. Bye-bye.